With Bound for Glory on the horizon, let's talk about TNA's balls. Monsters Balls, to be exact. A dance with danger that has been a touchstone of TNA's biggest shows and most brutal feuds for 20 years and counting. But there's one in particular that I want to deep dive into today, as it has been considered by many as one of the worst, if not the worst, Monsters Ball match in TNA history. And I'm here to ask, is it though? First, let's shed some light on the setting for our garbage de journaux today, the Monsters Ball match itself. If you wish to attend the Monsters Ball, you must spend 24 hours locked away in a darkened room without food or water. When you're released, hungry, thirsty and sensory deprived, you are thrust immediately into a no-holds-barred battle with your most hated of rivals. The aggressive tendencies in your body heightened by the harrowing 24 hours preceding it. If you've ever been hangry while stood in the queue at the post office, then you're very much on your way to knowing what it feels like to be invited to the Monsters Ball. The first one was at Victory Road 2004. It was set up as a way to quell the tensions between Raven, the alpha male Monty Brown, and the man for whom he would become the trademark, the Monster Abyss. From there, they became regular stops in the TNA calendar. We had our first Tag Team Monsters Ball in 2008. We had our first Knockouts Monsters Ball in 2009. We had stars like Mick Foley, Jake the Snake Roberts, and Steve Mongo McMichael donning the zebra fit over the years as well. They also became part of TNA's house show loops, with Jeff Hardy battling Abyss in almost consecutive Monsters Balls throughout the summer of 2010. By this point, they'd relaxed the whole no food, water or sunlight for 24 hours rule, luckily. I mean, how is Jeff Hardy expected to photosynthesize if he spends months on end in a shed? There's loads of other moments that have come from TNA's Hunger Games over the years, but I'm not going to talk about them all today. We'll be here all day. Let's bound back to Bound for Glory 2017, though. We're going to emanate from the Aberdeen Pavilion in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada today. Under the name Impact Wrestling, TNA is surviving yet another pro wrestling nuclear winter, having weathered the global fast known as Global Force Wrestling, a rebrand that stuck with all the strength and consistency of off-brand blue tack. It's also surviving and thriving somehow through some TV nightmares. It was airing weekly to a minuscule audience on Pop, previously known as the TV Guide channel. You know Pop, the station that gave us original programming like the Comedian Showcase Stand-Up in Stilettos, the Gold Top Talent Show America's Best Milkman, a reality series about a nail salon called Nail Files. All right, I'll admit it, American's Best Milkman. I made that one up completely. The other two are genuinely true, though. They've been plucked from financial oblivion, have Impact Wrestling by the talons of the Anthem Owl, Leonard Asper's Canadian-owned multimedia ornitholophiles, sticking up for the wrestling promotion that could, and providing they could stick little owls in all the turnbuckle pads, they would help them out financially. In researching for this video, I actually found the tweet, or twoot, I guess, from 2017, where TNA wanted suggestions for the name of the Anthem Owl. I suggested Professor Hootington and future Owl Devers, proving that even before I joined Cultaholic, I was a big wrestling nerd and bloody hilarious. Once more against the tide, Bound for Glory was an opportunity to have Impact do what it always does, put on their budgie smugglers, and to quote Nori from Finding Nemo, just keep swimming. The card featured Knockouts original Gail Kim challenging for the Knockouts Championship against current faces of the division Sienna and Ali. It had a 6 sides of steel battle featuring Bobby Lashley, American Top Team Moose, and UFC Stephen Bonner. TNA faction, Latin American Exchange, and a street fight for the tag titles. We had an X Division scramble, and Johnny Impact, aka Johnny Surnames, challenging the future LA Knight for the Impact Global title. This return to form was also to be marked with a Bound for Glory staple, Abyss competing in a Monsters Ball match. We'd seen quite the character arc for TNA's OG monster up until this point, having turned up one day in a suit and tie as Joseph Park, looking for his brother Abyss. It would go on to be revealed that he and Abyss were one and the same. But lovely yet cowardly Joseph Park initially didn't know that he harboured this harbinger of destruction as an alter ego. For a while, getting Abyss to come out was a little like taking the lid off a very tight jar. But after a while, it seemed like Joseph Park and Abyss could come and go as they pleased. Sometimes a little drop of blood helping expedite the proceedings. Regardless, we were going to get the full final form of Joseph Park as the Monster Abyss at TNA's annual spectacular. But which behemoth would butt heads with Abyss in this destruction derby in 2017? Jeff Hardy, maybe, who bloody loved a Monsters Ball. Actually, no, we can't have Jeff Hardy because he's teleported to pastures new by this point, as has previous rivals like Eric Young, Bully Ray, Scott Steiner. So a new challenger was needed in this Colosseum of carnage, curated by the famished and the furious. It would have to be someone with a killer instinct, fearless and ferocious in equal measure. Someone from the tap end of Stevenson, Grado! Grado was a beloved UK indie lad when he rocked up at the TNA British Boot Camp in 2014. Despite the fact that he kept turning up late and getting under the skin of Al Snow, he won the hearts and minds of fans all over and became a bit of a comedy regular on Impact Television. Such moments included trying to crash diets to trim down for an X Division title match, only to later be told that there's no weight limits in the X Division, reenacting some of the greatest wrestling moments in one match with Spud during the TNA World Title Series, and losing his job in a Feast or Fired match, only to return under a mask as O-Dog the Great. His wins were few, but the laughs were many. So what in the name of Satan's portion went down that resulted in my mate Grado finding himself in the most violent match in the TNA Rolodex? Prepare yourself for the most unconventional Monsters Ball pre-drinks that you have ever experienced. The quite frankly ludicrous end to this match, and an epilogue that you won't quite be able to believe. So, Grado announced to the Impact audience that his visa was up, and consequently, he would soon have to leave the company and return to Bonnie, Scotland. He was thrown lifelines to keep him from leaving, though. First by the artist we now know and love as Chelsea Green, who was still reeling after being jilted at the altar by another Impact star, and proposed to Grado to get him a green card. But by virtue of being Canadian, it wouldn't work. Being ditched by Grado arguably sent then Lauren Van Ness into an even bigger tailspin. One that I think ultimately led her back to WWE. So thanks for that, Grado. After this, Grado was offered sponsorship and a work visa through the legal firm run by Joseph Park and his buddies at Park, Park and Park. Grado, of course, accepted. And from here, Grado was taking bookings all over America thanks to Park, Park and Park. But something wasn't adding up. Grado's paychecks weren't reflecting the graft, and it turned out that Joseph Park was skimming a lot off of the top, blowing the big lad's earnings on fast cars and fast women. Grado eventually confronted him in the weeks leading up to Bound for Glory. It led to Joseph Park offering to give Grado his visa and walk away from their business partnership if he signed a contract to face him at Bound for Glory. Grado very quickly signed on the dotted line, not realising that he'd put his signature down not to compete in a singles match with Joseph Park, but compete in a Monsters Ball against Abyss. Dun dun dun! Grado filled his britches at the thought of facing Abyss in his trademark Terror Dome, and he ran from the arena and jumped into his car. Just as he started calming down, the radio started playing Abyss's music, and Father James Mitchell was sitting in the back seat, warning Grado that he would be sent to hell with a click doomsday at Bound for Glory. And this sets the atmosphere for the Monsters Ball. And boy, what a ball it is. Grado is wearing jeans and the red flannel given to him by Mick Foley. He's got a game face on for this one as well. He's ready to fight. Abyss heads to the ring, and the graphics department make the first botch of the night by labelling Abyss as Ali. Mind you, there was a mask involved here, so who are we to know for definite who Grado fought that night? We never will know. Or will we? We'll find out as the match goes on. Abyss grabs the microphone to start and tells Grado that he can smell his fear. He insults his bum bag, or fanny pack if you're American, and convinces Grado to start dancing. Abyss is quite upset by Grado, who does start dancing, and this leads to Grado, in amongst all of the chaos, booting Abyss in the clackers. Abyss, the psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est, starting his gimmick match with a promo was a choice. Grado getting a kick into Abyss's monster balls gives him an opening to get things started. Abyss avoids a cheese grater shot and staples Grado in the head, which is an underutilized counter to a sunset flip, as we learned on this night. Grado avoids a chokeslam through a barbed wire table set up outside the ring as commentators Josh Matthews and Jeremy Borash decide to chat about Alberto El Patron instead, who'd cut an unexpected promo just before this one. They didn't seem that bothered. They come back to the match when Grado gives Abyss a cheese grater to the bollocks. It's been predominantly penile punishment performed by my boy Grado so far, I must admit. An attempt at a top rope dive results in Grado having a bin thrown at his head that sends him through a barbed wire board on the outside of the ring. Abyss brings out his custom nail-covered 2x4 Janice, named after Dixie Carter's mother, who apparently is also a nail-covered 2x4. Grado dodges it and goes to town with a Singapore cane, which he does a nice little dance with beforehand. Attention is taken away from this match by the appearance of the jilted lover Laurel Van Ness, who is seemingly chatting up some rando in the crowd. Grado brings the focus back by booting Abyss into another barbed wire board. A boot so hard it kicks the mask off Abyss's face. Turns out it wasn't Ali. But the sheer power of Grado here. He then sandwiches Abyss between another barbed wire board and hits a big old splash onto the violent Sarnie. There's been some grief thrown at Grado for this particular spot because he takes a good long while to ascend the top rope. Now, I'm going to defend our Graham here because if you ever watch Grado's entrance, you'll know part of it is him going to the top rope, saluting the crowd, and then asking for help from the referee or the ring announcer to get him down. He doesn't like being up there, you see. So Grado bravely going all the way up and coming all the way down without help is actually some long-term character development that went over everyone's head like satire on Twitter in 2024. As we're reeling from this moment, the hot mess Van Ness gets into the ring and cracks Grado with a low blow and hits an unprettier on the poor lad. Loopy Van Ness rains down punches on Grado, and just as she goes to wrap her hands around Janice, the lights go out. When they come back on, Rosemary is in the center of the ring and blasts Van Ness with Van Mist, sending her packing. Rosemary was set to face Taya Valkyrie on this particular night in a First Blood match, but the match was cancelled due to, in a wild bit of irony, Taya Valkyrie having legitimate issues with her US visa. She should have gone to Parker Park like Grado did. We get a stare down between Abyss and Rosemary here, memories of their faction decay flooding back. Briefly, it looks like the monster is going to chokeslam her, but in the end, they reunite for all of 12 seconds and they attempt a double team on Grado. Abyss holds Grado to get a good misting from Rosemary, but Grado dodges it and Abyss gets blinded by the scarlet spray from his former teammate. In the confusion, not only does Abyss lose his vision, but he loses his ability to sense weight differences as well, as he accidentally grabs Rosemary by the throat and chokeslams her into the pile of thumbtacks in the ring. Grado takes advantage of this with a schoolboy roll-up, only getting 2, but somebody backstage was a little bit too hot on the ring bell sfx.wav button, and for a moment everybody thinks Grado has just pulled off the biggest upset in his wrestling career. However, the referee, the Killjoy, confirms it was only a 2 count, and everybody's sad. There are loud boos from the crowd here, who were hoping for a Grado win, just like me. Some would say they were booing because they realised the match had to restart, but they're liars. Shut up. Both men get back to their feet for the closing moments, and to be honest, I kind of wish that schoolboy 2 count would have been the final moment. Abyss goes for a black hole slam, but Grado doesn't quite get the height needed. They both crash awkwardly onto the barbed wire boards, and it leads to the 3 count. It wasn't pretty, but it was effective, says Jeremy Borash. If you're a wrestling commentator, you know what that means. We also know what this means for Grado, who will now be sent back to Scotland, having been unsuccessful in defeating Abyss to earn his visa. Whilst returning to the land of Iron Brew and Pizza Crunch will be a welcome break from all the unhealthy stuff they eat in America, it means that Grado's time wrestling stateside is done. As our boy Luke Osborne was putting this video together, he spotted something that I didn't, which adds to the obscurity of this match. As Rosemary looks up at Abyss from outside the ring, there's a guy behind her in the crowd wearing what looks like a knockoff Oculus Rift. I am desperate to know what augmented reality added to this particular match. I mean, it's 2017 at this point, so maybe he's watching Game of Thrones, or maybe he's trying to get top score on Fruit Ninja. We get an epilogue to this story arc, an epilogue that, like Auntie Belinda's OnlyFans, we could have really done without seeing. On Impact 2 weeks later, we see an angry Grado and a snivelling Joseph Park have a tense meeting over lunch backstage. I can only assume that Grado was backstage visiting friends because his visa's expired, of course. Park apologises for the way he acted, promising that we will never see the monster Abyss ever again. As a peace offering, Park presents Grado with his visa, the one that Grado put his body on the line to try and win at Bound for Glory. However, before their friendship can be truly rekindled, Grado is dragged away by an actual Canadian Mountie and deported. Joseph Park apologising because Canada was outside of his jurisdiction. You see, Impact were now based in Canada, so had Grado won and earned his visa, he probably would have been carted off anyway. So the entire storyline, arguably from beginning to end, was a bit like creative with a broken pencil and somewhat pointless. But in terms of the storyline itself, Grado's quest for a visa, the near marriage to Matt Cardona's missus, Joseph Park plundering all the money Grado made for him, it's Impact silliness at its best, or worst, depending on how you look at it. Like Grado's slow climb to the top rope, it does play into Grado's hapless, somewhat disorganised nature that he would spend weeks trying to get a US visa only for it to transpire that he needs a Canadian one now. Many industry names have buried this Monsters Ball match so far down that it has been reheated by the Earth's core. However, like the good people at Park and Park, I'm here to defend it in a somewhat clumsy, ham-fisted manner. The story of silly Billy Grado, butter the joke Grado, finding that courage to take the fight to TNA's biggest, baddest monster is really good storyline fodder. They were somewhat limited by how much time they had to devote to setting this one up once that contract sequence had been done, because the following 2 weeks of Impact Wrestling were mainly highlights from Impact stars competing in other wrestling companies with commentary dubbed over to keep the Bound for Glory momentum going. It was a rough financial time for Impact Wrestling at this point. Would having Abyss show up for a squash match leading up to Bound for Glory have changed the outcome and the vibe? Would having Grado do a showcase hardcore match to prove that he's got it in him to get serious, would that have changed the vibe? I can't say definitely yes or no, but we'll never really be sure, will we? Now, the match itself, it is neither Grado nor Abyss's finest hour. They would both be very open about that. They are both really bloody lovely people who gave it socks, but had a bit of a rough night at the office. Some of the elements of this match were confusing, like Abyss cutting a weird heel promo, getting Grado to dance when all he really should have done is just growled and mauled him. The Rosemary run-in and its implementation was an odd choice as well, as we say, presumably done to get Van Ness out of the ring and get Rosemary on the show after her match plans were binned off completely. So I kind of get why that's happened. Watching the match back again and again and again and again in preparation for this video, I have to say, it's not as wretched as the internet wrestling community makes it out to be. Now, it's not helped by a rather flat crowd in Ottawa. And it's not helped by commentators who, I'll be brutally honest, sounded like they'd received an overly large gas bill just a few minutes before the match started. Now, admittedly, even with Rock Hogan WrestleMania 18 levels of audience interaction, and with prime Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler on commentary, it doesn't completely rescue this one. But man, all these elements are so important, and they all mix together in a great Graps goulash. And I feel like you need them all to make something great in wrestling, even to this very day. Dave Meltzer gave the Monsters Ball at Bound for Glory 2017 between Abyss and Grado a dud in the Wrestling Observer, something that Grado and I attempted to get overturned the night before AEW All In during our live show at the Garage in London. Dave Meltzer was our special guest that night. He heard our cases, many of which I have brought to you today, and all we wanted was for the match to move up from a dud to half a star. The crowd, 200 strong, chanting half a star, half a star. And a somewhat bewildered Dave Meltzer is one of the most surreal nights of my life. I will say that much. With our evidence in front of him, with the love of the people around him, Dave Meltzer said he'd have to watch it again before deciding. But regardless, like the Monsters Ball match itself, we went in with the best of intentions, and it didn't quite go the way we planned. To this day, Dave Meltzer still rates the Monsters Ball between Abyss and Grado a dud. Feel free to ask him if he fancies changing his mind. Grado would return to Impact the following year, wrestling in America, so it seems that all got sorted out. He'd get another bit of bother with Eli Drake, somebody he'd feuded with in years gone by. So, in order to help against Eli Drake and his newfound pals, he'd bring some backup in new girlfriend Katarina, formerly Winter and Katie Lee Burchill, and his best friend from back home in Scotland, a young lad by the name of Joe Hendry. I wonder what happened to him. As for Abyss, he spent most of the time following this match as Joseph Park, only calling upon the dark parts of his mind and pulling out Abyss when bad eggs needed to be sent to the bin. 1 year after he and Grado danced at the Monsters Ball, Chris Park would be inducted into the Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame, and rightly so. In his speech, Park said something that genuinely to this day gives me goosebumps. He said, "When you've reached your goals and you're sitting on top of that hill and you're feeling great, right before you pump that fist, turn around and help the next guy up behind you." If anything spoke to the character of a guy like Chris Park, it's that line right there. Whilst the match didn't go the way they wanted it to, the intent from all of it was clear. It was Abyss reaching out a hand to Grado to pull him up the hill. Stay safe. Love you. Wait a minute. Don't you go anywhere. You've seen the runtime. This should have been the end of the video. But no, because I'm going to blow your mind right now. The Monsters Ball match at Bound for Glory 2017 between Abyss and Grado. This was their second Monsters Ball match. Grado and Abyss had danced in the destruction of the Monsters Ball before this night. It was at one of Impact Wrestling's bizarre, non-canonical pay-per-views, one night only, emanating from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I have dug deep into TNA Plus, and I have found it. Want to know how this goes? Let's talk about it. Here we go. So it starts with Grado in a great mood being called out by Pope D'Angelo De Niro, who insists on calling him Grado for reasons. And he's running down Grado for being rubbish at wrestling. Grado proceeded to clap back at Pope in an American accent and wants to prove himself to the Pope by having a match with anyone in the back. Pope gets Grado to put his money where his mouth is, and this brings out the monster Abyss. Abyss runs down Grado verbally and delivers almost the exact same promo from Bound for Glory, but with far more passion and far more energy, with addition of the line, "You like to dance, I like to dance. I have one ticket for me and one ticket for you to the ball, the Monsters Ball." And with that, we get an impromptu Monsters Ball between Abyss and Grado. And the match starts exactly the same way. Grado having a little dance and then kicking Abyss in the balls. A referee comes out to make it official as Grado rolls out of the ring and gets a whole bunch of plunder from underneath it. The two briefly fight over a cheese grater before Grado wallops Abyss with a bin several times. Abyss responds by punching the bin into Grado's face. Abyss lays out a table between the ring and the barricade, similar to what he did at Bound for Glory 2017, and actually makes the same mistake he did in their more infamous match. He spends ages trying to set it up and then realizes he's on the wrong side. And on this occasion, he crawls underneath it, but is unable once again to chokeslam Grado through it. Abyss lays out the thumbtacks, but Grado gives the monster the old cheese grater to the knackers and a cane to the head. Grado braves the top rope as he did in their latter match. And again, Abyss hoys a bin at him and sends him through the table outside. Abyss brings out the barbed wire boards. He brings out Janice. And Grado dodges Janice and reboots Abyss into the barbed wire board. This time, Abyss's mask stays on. We get a "Let's go Grado" chant from the crowd as Grado puts Abyss in the barbed wire sandwich just like he did at Bound for Glory and hits that splash off the top rope, met by a light "Holy SH1T" chant. The finish comes shortly after that. Grado swings Janice, but Abyss goozles Grado and chokeslams him into the thumbtacks, leading to the 3 count. It is so weird to have a match on TNA Plus that is almost exactly the same as another one. What's weirder is this is far better than the Bound for Glory one. These two go through so many similar motions, but they're crisper and they're sharper. The crowd are more invested. Well done, Bethlehem. Josh Matthews and Pope on commentary are really into it. Pope running down Grado as Matthews wills him on. The match ends just at the right time as well. It's a few minutes shorter than the Bound for Glory one. Across all optics, this is an improved match. I recommend after this, if you want some advanced viewing, do find it on TNA Plus. Had this match been presented at Bound for Glory, who knows how different things could have been? Maybe it would have been Grado fighting Nick Nemeth in the main event of Bound for Glory 2024 for the TNA World title. I mean, maybe, or maybe not. Stay safe. It's finished now. Love you, bye.